So here we see a new lens.
Yeah, this is a really exciting one. So we are rounding out the f1.8 series design of lenses that we have, and I say it that way because this new edition, this 100mm F2.8 macro, is part of the series that we've released over the last couple of years for the S series. And what's like ridiculously cool about this is that it is the smallest and lightest macro lens in the mirrorless category that's around like that 90mm field of view and has autofocus. So while yes, you can get smaller macro lenses, they're usually not autofocus. Actually, I think 9 out of 10 times they're not autofocus. But more crazy than that is that this thing actually has a brand new motor design that our engineering team had to actually come up with to hit a very specific design goal for how this kind of lens would be used. So typically with macro lenses, as we know, they're slow, they're usually pretty heavy, they're not. So one of the other like kind of really cool things about this lens was actually what the optics engineers had to do to really hit their design goal for this. So we know that the macro lenses are slow, typically. They're not something you're gonna wanna necessarily use outside of like one-to-one macro focusing. So when we knew that this is the chassis, the team decided to develop our own like patented focus motor for this thing. Because when you're gonna go to the effort of making something totally brand new, that's the perfect opportunity to say like, well, let's fix the things that are inherently problem points in an optic. So what we have in this now is what's called a dual phase linear motor. And that sits within this system in a 2-focus system design. So we have a dual phase linear motor, which is a patented focus motor that Panasonic owns. And then you have the more traditional like stepping motor. So the stepping motor gives us the ability to move heavy lens elements, but they're usually not as precise and they can be louder in certain cases if you let them be like your primary motor. Linear motors, on the other hand, which we've been using linear motors since like the original 100 to 400, they're great, but the existing kind of capacities that they are able to work with are fairly limiting. They don't really have the weight capacity or the thrust capacity to move larger lenses. So what that puts an optics engineer into a challenge with is you still end up getting stuck using commonly designed optic groups and elements and the types of lenses you want to use. So the new motor that we did, the dual phase linear motor, allowed the system, the optics guys, to actually work with heavier lenses in a linear platform. And it allowed them to actually start to get more creative with the exotic glass that you would use in these lenses. So, knowing that we have some of like the industry's leading capabilities with aspheric lens manufacturing and basically the profiling for them, this lens deploys 3 aspheric elements, and those lenses actually directly resulted in a reduction in the length of this lens by around 20 to 25 millimeters. And then using the fact that we're working with a dual focus system, that's what gave us the actual ability to completely get it down to this size. When it comes to weight, being the lightest of the macro lenses out there in this category, the weight comes down specifically to that new dual phase linear motor and obviously the new optics choices that we were able to make. So you just get this solid, awesome, cool little package. And because that change, it means that this lens, when you actually want to use it for things other than macro photography or videography, it means that it actually keeps up with focus speed. So I've taken this lens since I've had it, obviously done close-up photography, one-to-one, focus stacking, stuff like that. But then I decided to take it up to a favorite spot of mine to photograph motorcycles in like basically in like race mode. So tracking motorcycles coming at me at around like 40 to 60 miles an hour, whipping through turns, things like that. I was able to go right from shooting actual one-to-one macro stuff to hearing a bike come around, point the S5 Mark II-X right at it, and lock immediately on those bikes and track them through turns. And I've tried that with other macro lenses, one that was available for the L mount that I used to own. And while it's an amazing lens, it doesn't have that multitask capability.
How's the bokeh on this one?
So it's a very interesting point, right? Because macro lenses outside of macro photography typically aren't regarded as having like the greatest looking bokeh for like normal shooting scenarios. And most tests that you see, they're always at 1:1. So basically where they're designed to function, well. This, because we designed it to work just like a regular like 100mm F2.8, while still having that macro, we actually tuned the bokeh on this to give you a uniformed experience, whether you're way up close or you're using it in a normal range, and making sure that the bokeh balls are much more uniform across the frame itself. So many times, you get the cat's eyeing in the corners with the bokeh, but you'll get really good, perfect round circle in the middle. Ours, basically, we decided to split the difference there so that you get much more rounded through the entire field that you're looking at with it. And then, obviously, because we're Panasonic and we're Lumix, we made sure that this lens has incredibly well-controlled focus breathing. So for the video users, you all know what the benefit there is, making sure your field of view doesn't change as you're moving the kind of camera or your subject's moving. But in the photography side, it means that you can actually now use things like our focus bracketing that we have in the S5 Mark II and the Mark II-X. You can actually use that to capture your bracket images with the focus distances to then bring into software like Helicon Focus or Photoshop or whatever and do merged stacking photography. Now, yes, we don't do stacking in camera, but we give you all the tools to do it with software that's going to be way more powerful than what any camera can do it internally with. Yeah.
So when I think of macro, it sounds like some stuff that's very close. That's usually what it is, right?
Usually, yeah.
But there you use it for portraits.
Oh, yeah.
But does that mean the person, the subject, is close by?
Well, I mean, it can, because that's kind of one of the nice advantages. When you're using, say, a 100mm lens, you normally know like the rough working distance that you would be if you want to, say, do a headshot, right?
Can we ask Matt if he's okay to... there's no card in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just to demonstrate a little bit what's happening, so people could consider that for portraits.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The kind of ideal portrait focal length that is commonly commented at is about 135mm. I know a lot of people want a true 135mm lens. I read the comments. But when you're working with a macro lens, in this case, which is one of the reasons why macro lenses can pull double duty for portraiture normally, is that you don't have to be stuck with that normal working distance where I'm so far away from the person that I want to photograph just to get like a headshot or like, a 3/4 shot. This lets me get closer so I can do, more interesting portraiture.
Without even
yeah.
recording anything?
So like if we're sitting here, so I'm going to put the camera into human detection. So we'll be in the regular human mode. And what you'll see is that, so I can get this set up into there we go. I can get this set up to where I've got, we're keeping it right on him. I can get a much more kind of like what would be considered like an intimate portrait because you're in that much closer field of view. But then like as he backs away, I get my normal, kind of framing here. As he's moving, you'll see that the focus is tracking and keeping right up with him. Since he's facing away, our face and eye detection goes to head detection. So it'll still keep it in that plane, but then if he looks at me, it would jump into face and eye. So it's really nice, and you'll see like the bokeh up in the corner. It's keeping pretty round until you get obviously to the very, very edge of the corner there. But yeah, it's crazy what they've designed for this and how they've made it with that concept of, you know, not just being stuck using this for one-to-one macro.
Is it the product photography guys that are going to be excited about this, or who likes to do macro a lot?
Well, I think, yeah, like product photography guys, I think will be excited about it. I think some, you know, animal, you know, wildlife, like that kind of macro close-up photographer, I think would also be really excited about it.
So, for example, if you were
oh yeah,
capturing that one.
So like if we were going to capture, you know, like this, as far as like the product photography goes, you know, we're able to get it nice and close here.
There's a very shallow, what do you call it, the focus area.
Yeah, so that's one of the other issues with macros is that you have an incredibly shallow depth of field because of just the way it works with the magnification. So what a photographer would do in a case like that is you would do focus stacking. So you'd have the image, you would take a number of images with the camera on a tripod and let the focus basically rack through a whole range. And then you bring them into Photoshop or something and then you merge them all. So yeah, in that case, I think, you know, that type of use case is obviously going to be really big for it. It's also like, you know, the wedding and event photographers and videographers are going to love this because usually, you know, if you're a wedding photographer, you have a macro lens in your kit. And if you're an event photographer, usually, you know, if you need detailed shots, things, you're going to want one of these. Where I think it's going to be surprising is that you're going to have, and we're already seeing it with the comments online, you're going to have people that are looking at this as just a 100mm lens. That, cool, it does macro as well, but it's a 100mm lens. So I want to use it for street photography. I want to use it for, you know, maybe some light wildlife. You can do what I do with it and use it for some light sports and, you know, like motorcycles, stuff like that. And it's all because you don't have to think of it as just solely a macro lens. It's so easy when it's in the name to just be like, well, it's a macro lens, and then let's relegate it just to that. But it is so much more than just that because it doesn't have the inherent issues that macro lenses have.
And then if you want to get rid of the bokeh, you can just turn some knobs?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, if because it's 100mm, stop the lens down, you're going to be able to get rid of some of that bokeh. You know, when you're working in...
If the field is too small, you can expand it.
Yeah, yeah. In the macro world, you do have that capability. You can stop the lens down, bring out some more depth of field in the macro side of it. But ultimately, you know, diehard macro users, even amateur macro users, which is going to be, I think, a lot of people that may look at this, that's where you quickly learn that, like, you know, I'm going to really only leave the lens stop down to say maybe f5.6. So I'm not trying to get the shallow or the deepest depth of field through aperture, but I'm going to set it at 5.6 because I know, like, all right, I'm going to get really good sharpness, and even though the lens is designed to be shot wide open also, set it at 5.6, and then that's where you're going to do your focus bracketing, bring it into post, and then you get the hyper sharp images that you typically see from macro photographers.
All right, so available now?
Yeah, so the lens is, obviously we just announced it here at CES. It is going to MSRP for $999 US, so $999 US. And availability will be end of January, beginning of February in the US again.
Is able to take in data from the camera on the tracking of the subject and automatically adjust the camera to maintain focus. Now, we work with DJI to create that same two-way connectivity with their LiDAR autofocus rangefinder. So unlike other camera brands which require a physical connection between the LiDAR and the lens, Lumix cameras can send lens data directly to the device, which can in turn automatically refocus the lens based on the movement of the subject. With these two groundbreaking two-way integrations collaboratively engineered with DJI, any Lumix user, new camera or old, can achieve incredible autofocus performance. Now, I can't talk about partnerships that empower creators without mentioning Condor Blue and SanDisk. And to help me demonstrate this product is Sean Robinson, host of our weekly YouTube stream, Lumix Live.
What you're looking at is the Condor Blue Pro Blade SSD handle developed in collaboration with Panasonic that enables the use of the SanDisk Professional Pro Blade SSD Max. This incredibly versatile device takes every workflow into consideration and is a shining example of what's possible when like-minded partners come together to innovate forward. All of these collaborations are designed to provide creators with ultimate toolkit for bringing their visions to life.
And Sean, that toolkit just got a bit more exciting thanks to our new 100mm macro lens. And from what I hear, our testing community is going wild over this lens.
That's a fact, because this is no ordinary macro lens. In fact, I'd argue it completely changes the definition of what a macro lens is. Your typical macro lens is large and heavy and designed specifically to take life-size photos of objects up close. They usually have slow autofocus motors due to the range of focus they need to cover. But our more than macro lens is not only smaller by a drastic amount and lighter than its closest competitor, it also utilizes a brand new Panasonic patented focus motor that uses magnetic fields derived from 2 axes to deliver up to 2 times the focusing speed of some of our competitors, even in this tiny size.
So that would mean that the new S100 F2.8 macro lens is not just ready for macro shots.
Exactly. It can be used for portraits, wildlife photography, and even keep up with the action of youth sports. And in addition, the new dual-phase linear motor, Panasonic has also included a brand new focus-by-wire system designed for those of you who miss the precision and granularity of the focus provided by your classic gear-driven manual lenses. This lens enables delicate manual focus operation, especially in difficult situations where precision is key.
Thank you, Sean. I can say completely honestly, I have never been this excited about a lens. Make sure to tune into Lumix Live with Sean this week on YouTube for lots more details. And you'll be able to check out our new more than macro 100mm lens at the Panasonic booth, as well as experience the power of Lumix yourself at our photo and video stations. So you can experience the magic of real-time LUT, choosing from a selection of new custom color profiles to shoot your new status portraits, then head over to our video station to shoot your surprise social video. Lumix Open Gate technology utilizes the entire camera sensor, giving creators a lot more flexibility to crop their work to different aspect ratios. You're going to see Open Gate at work when your final video is delivered to you already perfectly cropped and ready to share in social. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to bring your attention to one final set of partnerships. First, last year we announced our partnership with RUD, who are working tirelessly to provide equal access to healthcare to every individual across the globe. And we are proud to have committed over $700,000 to the Global Fund to date.